WWE just booked the most physically destructive, career-defining match in recent memory by throwing Femi into the ring with Brock Lesnar on Raw. And what's absolutely infuriating is that nobody's talking about how this wasn't a match. It was a calculated test to see if NXT's most dominant monster could survive WWE's most legitimate beast, and the answer shocked everyone who thought they knew what Femi was capable of. I'm about to break down every bone-crushing moment of this collision between two of the most physically imposing wrestlers on the planet, why Brock Lesnar working with Femi reveals WWE's long-term plans for their next generation of monsters, and why this brutal encounter on January 7, 2026 might be remembered as either the night a star was born or the night hype died when reality hit. Let me set this nightmare scenario properly because the build to this match was almost non-existent, which made it more terrifying. Femi, NXT's unstoppable force who's been demolishing everyone in developmental, was suddenly announced for Raw with no explanation, no storyline setup, just a graphic saying, Femi debuts tonight against Brock Lesnar. That's not how you typically introduce someone to the main roster, that's how you throw them into the deep end and see if they sink or swim. Brock Lesnar, meanwhile, has been on a path of destruction since returning to WWE, challenging anyone who claims to be dominant to prove it against him. He's the measuring stick, the final boss, the guy who separates legitimate threats from overhyped prospects. Having him face an NXT call-up in their debut match is either brilliant confidence in Oba's abilities or cruel exposure of someone who's not ready for this level. The entrances told the story before a single move was thrown. Femi walked to that ring like he owned it, 6 feet 5 inches and 270 pounds of athletic muscle, moving with the confidence of someone who's never really been tested and doesn't know what that feels like yet. Brock Lesnar bounced to the ring like a caged animal who'd just been released, that manic energy suggesting he was about to enjoy ending Oba's undefeated mystique in front of the world. Drop in the comments immediately. Did WWE set up Femi to fail by putting him against Brock Lesnar on his main roster debut? Or is this the ultimate vote of confidence? Because this booking is either genius or sabotage. The bell rang and both men just stood there for a moment, sizing each other up, two apex predators determining who moves first. Oba made the mistake of extending his hand for a show of respect, and Brock just looked at it, smiled that disturbing Brock smile, and slapped it away before hitting a German suplex so sudden and violent that the crowd gasped. That set the tone. This wasn't going to be a competitive showcase. This was going to be a lesson. But here's where it got interesting. Oba popped right back up, barely affected by a German suplex that would have kept most wrestlers down for a 10 count. He charged at Brock with a shoulder tackle that actually moved the beast incarnate backward several steps. The shock on Brock's face was perfect, a mixture of respect and irritation that someone had the audacity and strength to actually knock him back. What followed was 15 minutes of the stiffest, most brutal power wrestling Raw has seen in years. These weren't worked punches and choreographed slams. This was two legitimate athletes who can both bench press small cars throwing each other around like the laws of physics were suggestions. Every suplex sounded like a car crash. Every strike echoed through the arena. Every impact made you wince because it looked and sounded painful in ways wrestling rarely. Brock hit his usual array of German suplexes, 5 in total, but Oba kept getting up. Not quickly, not easily, but he kept rising, which is more than most can say after the Brock Lesnar suplex treatment. On the 6th German, Oba managed to twist midair and land on his feet, a display of athleticism that had Paul Heyman on the outside looking genuinely concerned because that's not supposed to happen to Brock's opponents. Question for the comments. Who looked more impressive in this match? Brock Lesnar for dominating an undefeated monster, or Femi for surviving and competing with the beast incarnate? Both answers are valid depending on perspective. Oba's offense when he got opportunities was devastating. He hit a powerbomb that planted Brock with authority that made the ring shake. He delivered clotheslines that Brock actually sold, which is notable because Brock doesn't sell for many people. There was a moment where Oba had Brock in the corner and was hitting body shots that legitimately seemed to be winding Lesnar, showing that Oba's strikes aren't just for show. But experience matters in these situations, and Brock's been in wars that Oba's only read about. When Oba went for a big splash in the corner, Brock moved and immediately locked in the Kimura lock, Brock's submission that's ended careers. Oba's face showed genuine pain, Not the theatrical selling but real discomfort as Brock torqued the shoulder joint in ways it's not meant to bend. The crowd was torn, half wanting to see the young lion overcome the established beast, half wanting to see Brock remind everyone why he's Brock Lesnar. That split reaction is perfect for this type of match because it means both men have credibility and support. Oba managed to power out of the Kimura by literally lifting Brock off the ground while in the hold and driving him into the turnbuckles, a display of raw power that had the commentary team losing their minds. But that escape cost him, his shoulder clearly damaged, his movement on that side compromised. Brock, predator that he is, immediately targeted that weakness with more Kimura attempts and shoulder-focused offense. The finish came after Oba hit what should have been his finisher, a devastating powerbomb that Brock kicked out of at 1. Not 2-1. That kick-out deflated Oba visibly because he just hit his best move and Brock treated it like an inconvenience. Brock then hit an F5 that Oba actually kicked out of it too, showing incredible resilience and heart, but the second F5 kept him down for the 3 count. Drop your reaction. Should Oba Femi have kicked out of 1 F5 on his debut? Or did kicking out of 1 actually hurt him by making his eventual loss look weaker? Wrestling fans will debate this forever. The aftermath is what elevated this from great match to potentially legendary moment. Brock stood over Oba's body, looked down at him with what seemed like genuine respect, and extended his hand. Oba, barely conscious, took it and Brock pulled him to his feet. Then Brock raised Oba's hand, the ultimate sign of respect from someone who rarely shows any, before leaving the ring and letting Oba have his moment. That gesture from Brock Lesnar matters enormously. He doesn't do that for people he doesn't see value in. He's refused to shake hands with opponents he thought were beneath him. For him to not only shake Oba's hand but raise it in victory despite winning the match is Brock's way of saying, "This kid's legit, and I'm putting my stamp of approval on him." The crowd gave Oba a standing ovation as he stood in the ring, battered and defeated, but somehow looking more credible than if he'd won. That's the magic of the right kind of loss, where defeat enhances your stock rather than diminishing it. Oba lost but proved he belongs in the conversation with WWE's elite. Let's analyze what this match means for both men's futures. For Brock, this was a relatively easy night where he got to have a physical match with someone who can handle his intensity without taking unnecessary risks. At this stage of his career, that's valuable. He looked dominant, he looked like the beast, but he also looked like someone who recognizes and respects talent when he sees it. For Oba, this was everything. His main roster debut against one of the biggest names in wrestling history, in a match that showcased his strengths while protecting his mystique through a competitive loss. WWE doesn't book people to look this good in defeat unless they have serious plans for them. This wasn't a burial. This was an introduction with an asterisk that says, "Imagine what he'll do when he wins." The physical toll on both men was evident. Brock was moving gingerly by the end, those Oba powerbombs having actual impact. Oba was holding his shoulder, the result of multiple Kimura locks and targeted offense. But both looked like they'd been in a fight, which is what this needed to be to feel authentic and important. Question: should Oba Femi's first main roster win be a rematch against Brock Lesnar to complete the story? Or should WWE save that for later and build Oba with other victories first? The booking decision matters enormously. The comparison to Brock's own debut is inevitable. When Brock first arrived in WWE, they built him by having him destroy everyone until he was unstoppable. Oba's getting a different path, being tested immediately against the best and having to prove himself through resilient losses rather than dominant wins. Both approaches can work, but they create different types of stars. Brock's path created an unbeatable monster who fans either loved or hated, but always feared. Oba's path is creating a fighter who earns respect through toughness and determination, someone fans want to see succeed because he's paid his dues even in defeat. That's a more sympathetic character, which might be WWE's goal for Oba long-term. The social media reaction has been overwhelmingly positive, with fans praising both men for the physicality and storytelling. Even people who thought putting Oba against Brock immediately was a mistake are admitting it worked out better than expected. That's the best outcome WWE could have hoped for, converting skeptics into believers through one great performance. WWE's main roster has struggled to create new monsters who feel as threatening as the previous generation. Braun Strowman's gone, Brock's part-time, there's a void for that role. Oba Femi might be the answer if WWE continues booking him with this level of care and intelligence. But one match doesn't make a career, and the real test is whether WWE follows through or forgets about Oba in 3 months like they've done with countless call-ups. The physical style of this match is worth discussing because it's increasingly rare in modern WWE. Most matches are safer, more choreographed, with less stiffness and impact. This felt dangerous, felt like two people actually trying to hurt each other within the bounds of professional wrestling. That authenticity is part of what made it so compelling. But that style isn't sustainable for weekly television. Oba can't have matches this physical every week or he'll be broken down within a year. Brock can get away with it because he works sparingly. Finding the balance between protecting Oba's health while maintaining his monster mystique is WWE's challenge going forward. Drop a final prediction. Where will Oba Femi be 1 year from now? Main event champion? Mid-card champion? Or back in NXT after a failed main roster run? Your answer probably reflects how much faith you have in WWE's booking. The brutality of this match serves a specific purpose in today's wrestling landscape. Fans are sophisticated, they've seen everything, they're hard to shock or impress. A match this physical, this intense, stands out because it's not what we typically get. That uniqueness is valuable, but only if WWE doesn't overdo it and make it the new normal. Here's what needs to happen next for Oba. He needs a string of dominant wins against credible mid-card talent to rebuild his aura of invincibility. Then a feud with a main event player that he wins decisively, establishing himself as a legitimate top-tier threat. Then eventually, a rematch with Brock where Oba goes over clean, completing his journey from promising prospect to established monster. That's a year-long story minimum, and it requires patience and consistency from WWE Creative. The alternative is that WWE rushes it, gives Oba a title shot in 3 months that he's not ready for, books him to lose and his momentum dies. Or they forget about him, stop featuring him consistently, and he becomes another "remember when we thought this guy was going to be huge?" Cautionary tale. WWE's track record with NXT call-ups isn't encouraging, but Oba's debut suggests they might actually have a plan this time. The January 7th, 2026 Raw will be remembered for this match specifically. Years from now, people will reference Oba's debut against Brock as either the beginning of something special or the high point before it all went wrong. We won't know which for months or years, but what we know right now is that these two monsters delivered something rare and valuable. A match that felt important, felt real, and left everyone wanting to see what happens next. Share this video if you think Oba Femi is WWE's next big thing. Hit like if you think Brock Lesnar is still the most dominant force in wrestling, and drop your complete analysis of this match in the comments. Because what we witnessed on Raw was 2 generations of monsters colliding, and the result was the kind of physical storytelling that reminds us why we fell in love with professional wrestling in the first place. Beast versus Monster delivered everything promised and more, and Oba Femi survived his baptism by fire to emerge as someone we're all going to be talking about for years to come.